Hello everyone, I am Boiler and I welcome you to another Starfield video. So this is a follow-up to the planet video that I did last time, where I theorized about how planets in Starfield might work. If you're interested in that, you can watch that video, just follow the link in the description. And if you don't want to spend the time, here's a quick recap of what we talked about in this video. So I speculated that even though we see spherical planets in the space environment and in the system view, we might not actually get spherical planets once we land on them. Well, if you watch the footage, you see clearly that there is no seamless transition between space and planets, and Tonor confirmed that there will be no seamless transition in either direction. So whenever we select a landing spot or whenever we leave a planet, we'll just get a nice little animation and watch our ship go off, and then we'll be in a new environment. So that obviously will mean that there will be some kind of loading and unloading going on. So basically, if we land on a planet, the space environment will get unloaded from memory and the planet environment will get loaded in, and vice versa. That would actually be pretty much in line with how we know the creation engine works. In Skyrim and Fallout, you also have different world spaces. Whenever you travel from one to the other, the old one gets unloaded and the new one gets loaded in. So I think that is how the game will work. All the evidence that we have points towards that. Now, if we have this situation where whenever you leave space and land on a planet, the planet gets loaded in, this gives a perfect opportunity to Bethesda to actually go around the whole spherical planet thing and just present us with a flat map. Because once we are standing on the planet, it is very hard to tell if we are standing on an actual sphere or if we're just standing on a flat map, depending on how big the planet will be, obviously. So when you're standing on Earth, it looks flat to you, okay? So if the planet's big enough, if you're on the ground, you can't tell if it's a sphere or if it's actually a flat map. So that led me to speculate that the planet maps might actually be flat, and it led me to further theorize that the maps might just be, well, just really big, each planet having one big map that would either have invisible borders around it, just like we are used to from Bethesda, or it might, if they have found a way to pull it off, wrap around actually. So if you go to the edge of the map, you would get teleported to the opposite edge of the map seamlessly, and this would create the illusion of walking around the planet. If they found a way to pull it off, I don't know. So we have these two possibilities basically: one big flat map, either with invisible walls or with a teleport at the end that simulates the wraparound of a spherical or cylindrical map. Now, of course, the poles are another thing there. How does it work on the poles? Is it a wraparound as well, or do we get some kind of invisible wall at the poles and just a wraparound around the equator? I don't know. So there's a lot of unknowns here. I had a third option where I speculated that the map just might generate infinitely, just like in Minecraft. So basically you wander off in one direction and you can just go on forever, or at least for a very long time until the game crashes, and it would just generate new terrain as you go. I don't think that will be the case, even though we do know that planets will be for the largest part procedurally generated, but I don't think it will be infinite procedural generation. It will just be a finite size for each planet. So those were my theories there. And then Konstantina Valentina put a really interesting comment under the video, where she theorized that the planet might actually be sliced up into squares, so that we don't get one big map for the entire planet, but we get little squares representing different sections of the planet. And whenever we land on a planet, we'll just land in one of these squares, and that's the map we get to play on. And if we want to change to another map, well, that's then the question how that works. We'll get into that in a moment. But you see but you see on the screen how I think it will work. So you have the planet; it will be sliced up into squares, and when you select a landing location, it will be within one of these squares, and the game will then just load that in and present that as a map to you to play on. Now, getting around on the planet, there are a few interesting thoughts if we go in that direction. Now, if it's really just a fixed square, the question comes up, when you put your ship down, how free are you to put your ship down? Is it just basically you can select the place on the planet, the game will look up which square this is, and then it will just basically put you in the center of that square so that you are equally far away from each of its borders? Because if we can just freely place our ship wherever the hell we want, we might just end up at the edge of one of these tiles, and then we'll basically go out of the ship and immediately hit a invisible wall or something. So I don't think that will be the case. If we have fixed squares representing the planet's surface, I think the game will have predefined landing spots that are always in the middle or around the middle of these square, so we don't actually get 100% free choice of where to land. We just get the choice of which square we land in. Now, of course, from the footage we see that there are no such squares in the planetary map, so if it works like that, it will be something in the background. So basically we can freely choose a landing location on the planetary view, but it will then just center our landing spot in the center of the square that we picked, or that we basically hit with our mark that we set. So that is one option. It would be a little bit weird. I think it would be a little bit weird. Now, getting around on the planet when we have that, of course, is a little bit of a problem. I mean, if we have a square, we'll probably have invisible walls, and once you hit them, you can't go further. I could see something like you hit the wall and then you get a message from the game, you are too far from your ship, please turn around. Something like that. Which basically means, well, if you want to go further into that direction, you need to go back to your ship and fly to the next square, something like that. Yeah, why not? I mean, why not? If the squares are big enough so that this doesn't happen too often, that you actually on foot hit these walls, then I'm fine with it. If they're too small, it might get annoying and obviously break immersion. Now, what if we get vehicles? There's a leak that says we get vehicles. I personally don't believe we'll get them, but we might. So again, that would, well, I wouldn't change that much. It would just increase the radius around your ship where those walls need to be placed as to not annoy the player or break immersion. So because a vehicle is basically the same mechanic as on foot, you can just go further in a shorter amount of time, that's all. So I don't see a big problem there. I do see quite a big problem if we get free atmospheric flight. I don't think we'll get free atmospheric flight, but again, there's a leak that says we do. And if we do, well, how does that work? I mean, if we want to go from one square to the other, and there's an invisible wall, obviously we can. So, or does it work differently when we fly? So basically the game is, okay, he's flying over the border, so it just load in the next square. I don't know, or maybe if we cross into another square, we'll just get a short animation and then we are in the next square. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns here. Now, of course, another approach might be that the game basically looks at our chosen landing spot and then generates the square centered around the ship with a certain radius. So basically that there are no fixed squares, but the game basically selects an area, makes a map out of that, generates that and puts that in on our screen. So basically whenever we land, we have complete freedom of where we land, and the game just basically generates that area that we land in. That might also be the case, but I don't think it will be, because if we do that, we're basically back at it's just one big map. And we just see that part that we're currently in. Of course, the game doesn't load in and render every detail of the entire map at all times. It will, the further away you get from the player, the less details it will have usually. So if we do that, if we just render a square around the ship, we are basically just at the entire map again. So if we have squares, I do think they will be fixed squares. I really do. So yeah. Maybe there will be a sort of a seamless transition between the squares. That could be a possibility, so that we don't hit a wall if we get to the border, but that just the next square basically gets loaded in, while the previous one is also still loaded in. And if we transition far enough into the next one, the previous one gets unloaded, something like that. I don't know. I'm really speculating here, but it's interesting to think about, and I'm really curious to see how they pull it off. I mean, we are talking about planets in the creation engine. That is something you need to think about. I mean, the creation engine, the same engine they use for Skyrim, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76. Planets in that thing. I mean, of course, they evolved and expanded it, and they upgraded it for this game. But still, I just don't see it. But yeah, we have seen the footage and we have the info, so there will be 1,000 planets in this thing. So I'm really curious to see how the hell they pull it off. And I really hope they pull it off in a way that it doesn't break immersion. I mean, we are already missing seamless transition from space to planets and vice versa. I don't think that is a big problem. I can live with that. I mean, with all the load screens we are used to from Bethesda games, I don't think that's a big problem. I mean, if you can live with load screens whenever you enter a house or whenever you enter a city, you can also live with a little animation when you land on a planet. Okay, it's not that bad. But I don't want to hit invisible walls all the time. I really don't. If I'm on a planet, I want to feel like I'm on a planet and I'm free to go wherever the hell I want. Whatever area we are given when we land on a planet needs to be big enough to pull that off. It can be sectioned, it can be sliced into little squares, I don't care, as long as these are still big enough to give the illusion of a planet, so that we don't really see the borders or don't really run into the borders. Yeah, that's those are my thoughts about this. Thank you, Valentina, for your theory. That's a really interesting one. I really wanted to make a video about that because I think it's really interesting theory that I didn't think about. And yeah, please comment below what you think of that. What are your thoughts on how planets might work in Starfield? How would you like it to work? What is important for you to not lose immersion? Yeah, put that in the comments. And also, if you like the video, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet. And be back for more news and speculations about Starfield when they come around. Until then, I wish you all the best. Have a great time. Be safe. Stay healthy. Bye.